Yes, I bought a fucking Lego game. I don't want to hear any bullshit about it. The fact is, this is actually a pretty damn good game. You know, it's something even the fucking YouTube order could enjoy, as I tell him to go fuck himself. No, really, this is a damn good game. With the exception of some of the glitches, because the developers, they don't seem to make too many patches for this game, or too many large-scale patches, but in any event, it's a genuinely enjoyable game, and as you can imagine, with this game being a Lego game, it's geared towards a younger audience. However, that doesn't stop the jokes from having a twinge of adult humor. I mean, let's face it, kids will laugh at anything. You tell them a fart joke, and a kid will be rolling around on the fucking floor. So they don't care about the jokes. They care about playing as their favorite characters all in one game. And since Marvel Ultimate Alliance is pretty much a dead series, this is the closest thing that we have to the franchise that we're going to get on the consoles. And notice I said consoles because, as I mentioned yesterday, that Marvel Heroes game is going on for PC and shit like that. But this game gives you a shitload of characters to play with, all from either the comics or the movies or whatever the fuck. There are a number of sets in this game that come straight out of the movies, and there are a number of moments in this game that were either used from the comics or the movies, so the game takes elements from almost all the parts of the Marvel Universe in this motherfucker. The storyline even actually mimics the very first Marvel Ultimate Alliance. In that game, Dr. Doom wants Odin's power. In this game, he wants the Cosmic Cube for power. In Marvel Ultimate Alliance, Loki is his key helper. In this game, Loki is his key helper who betrays him. In Marvel Ultimate Alliance, you have to take on Galactus as part of the storyline, and in here, Galactus finishes up the storyline. So there are a number of elements that were used 8 years ago that are also a part of this game. Now, when you play the story, each chapter has a set group of characters that you have to use for those levels and shit like that. And I believe they're like 13 or so. But after you beat all of those levels, you can do those missions again with any character you want in the game. To beat the campaign, you have to beat those levels with the certainly assigned characters. But after that, you have all the freedom you want to use anyone you want. Each character has about 2 to 3 powers depending on their specialty, like Sandman, for example. If you see a patch of sand, he can melt into it, which transports him somewhere else. Ant-Man can shrink down to spots only he can access, where he can get certain unlockables. Venom is able to use his tendrils to get through walls and shit like that. The game even has a large-scale version of New York City. I mean, this is huge. This is a huge open world, open sandbox that you can explore to your heart's content with all the famous buildings from the comics, like the Baxter Building, Stark Tower, Doctor Strange's house, the X-Mansion at the top of the island, Riker's Island. To get through each level, you need to solve puzzles. Usually it involves breaking something, building something with Lego pieces, and you guys notice I have to try and remember what I have to do to beat these fucking puzzles. It took me a while in the background to kind of realize what the puzzles were up in this motherfucker. Anyway, I remember them eventually after you start playing this shit. But they give you the certain characters per level, and obviously each one of their abilities is needed to solve the puzzle. So for example, with Iceman, you have to build an ice bridge. With Jean Grey, you have to use the telepathic powers to create some Lego pieces and shit like that. All kinds of shit. But each character is a piece of the puzzle that you need to solve. So overall, this game is pretty well conceived. It's a bit monotonous as you go along in this motherfucker, but hey, it's a kid's game. You can't expect much out of this shit. Honestly, there's not too many bad things that you can say about this game. They made it for a younger audience with an appeal to an older audience in mind. They included every possible character you can imagine as a playable character. They have bonus levels, collectibles, replayability, pretty good voice acting, and content for hours to your heart's content. It was the last platinum trophy that I earned out of all my games. Although the ending is a bit fucked up, and this is part of the glitches that I mentioned, it doesn't really give you the trophy per se. You're supposed to end up with 100% of the game, and I'm stuck at like 99.8% or whatever the fuck it is. I don't really give a shit. They gave me the platinum trophy. I don't give a fuck. So the two Marvel games that can have trophies, obviously the first Marvel Ultimate Alliance came out too early before trophies, but the two games that have trophies, I have earned an easy platinum trophy on both of those, which I'm sure is going to lead to the inevitable question. If I like Lego games and I like comic book stuff, how come I never got anything from DC Comics? How come I don't have Rocksteady's Batman games or Superman games or DC Lego games? Do I not like DC Comics and their characters? Well, let me start by saying this right now. I have nothing against either comic. I like Batman. I like Superman. I like Marvel characters. So this isn't an issue of one company over another. This isn't being a fanboy of one product over another. I mean, shit, the Batman movies were some of the best comic book movies ever made. And they're right up there with the Avengers and the recent Captain America movie. But there are reasons why I didn't get into any of the DC comic games. Let's start with the Batman series, for example, the Arkham City. I know how good the series is based on the reviews and the claim the game gets, but I've said countless times, I can't buy every possible game. Sometimes I bought shitty games like SOCOM or certain Need for Speed games that I'm going to talk about later, but when the first Batman came out, it came out around the same time as Call of Duty and Uncharted were releasing. My logic was there was no way I could dedicate any more time to another game with those two on the horizon. When the second one came out, again, it came out the same year as a Call of Duty game that I wanted to play and Uncharted 3, so I had to skip it again. Obviously, I have no reason for the third one. Or potentially the fourth one, although Destiny might be a big reason why I don't get it, but we could say that for another day. But after skipping the first two, having the third created by another studio, I have to say that it's a series I'm not going to get into. Nothing against it, but sometimes you just have to make a choice as to what games you're going to draw the line at. I won't get Batman. Same with Tomb Raider or Portal. There are just certain games, no matter how good they are, no matter how good the reviews are, you have to decide just how many games you plan on taking on in a year, and those are games that I unfortunately have to cut out of my rotation. Now, another thing to notice with the Marvel vs. DC in general terms is how well known are their characters. One of the differences between the two is how many characters have gone mainstream in both of their brands. For Marvel, they've managed to get a number of characters in movies and on TV where people recognize them. For DC Comics, not so much. Again, I'm not knocking DC, but let's look at this from a casual fan's perspective. How many characters can a casual comic fan name from Marvel? Think about it. How many heroes and villains can the average person who does not follow the comic books name on a given basis? I would say minimum of 10, and probably a couple of villains in that motherfucker. You have to figure Spider-Man, Hulk, Wolverine, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor. Maybe the groups like X-Men and Fantastic Four would come to mind. Maybe characters like Daredevil or Storm or Professor X would be named, mainly because they came from the movies and shit like that. Villains would be pretty easy. Magneto, Loki, maybe Mystique, because obviously the X-Men movies are pretty popular. Not too many others that there would be in there. Maybe Doctor Doom, maybe some Spider-Man villains like Green Goblin, Venom, or Dr. Octopus. But you get the idea. Marvel has pushed out their characters a lot better than DC. Now, let's move on to DC, as I mentioned. Outside of Batman and Superman, how many characters can the average fan name? Robin, Wonder Woman, The Flash, maybe Arrow or Green Lantern or Aquaman? Do you think the casual fan knows that the Jonah Hex movie was related to DC Comics? I mean, just look at the villains, for example. They will pretty much pick all of the Batman enemies, like Joker, Penguin, Riddler, maybe even Catwoman. They'll probably throw in Lex Luthor because they obviously know he's against Superman and shit like that. But if you were to ask a casual fan, who is Wonder Woman's main enemy, would they know? Probably not. I mean, over the years, Marvel has done a better job of mass marketing their characters. That's not a knock on DC. It's just reality. Marvel has done a better job of getting their properties out while DC focuses on two characters, Batman and Superman. So when it comes to games, who's more likely to make a successful ensemble game? Marvel. And what 3 games did I get? I got Marvel games with multiple characters. I didn't buy Spider-Man games, I didn't buy Iron Man games, Thor games, none of that. The only games that I bought were the Marvel games with multiple characters. Do you see a Justice League game out there? No. Now, when you look at the landscape of DC, aside from the DC Universe Online, how many ensemble games do they have compared to Batman games? I mean, Batman in his Arkham series and his Lego series is pretty solid, but it shows that DC is somewhat limited in their content without one of their 2 main characters. Personally, I wouldn't mind playing a Batman game, but as someone who knows more than the casual fan about comics, I'm certainly no comic book buff, but I do know my share of the comics. I'd rather play an ensemble game with multiple characters as opposed to a Batman game with just 1 or 2 or 3 or a few guest appearances. Obviously, the most recent Lego Batman game had a lot of characters, but for the most part, you don't see a Justice League game. You don't see an Aquaman and Green Lantern game. You don't see that. You see Superman and you see Batman. Essentially, Marvel has provided more games that I would personally enjoy over DC games. If DC were to create a DC Ultimate Alliance or some shit like that, sure, I'd give it a chance, but that's not coming anytime soon. And yes, I could try to play that DC Universe Online shit, but being an MMORPG with a ton of player versus player kind of shit, that really doesn't appeal to me. Marvel Ultimate Alliance was a fun game when it hit the market, and Lego Marvel was a big seller, and you can almost guarantee there's going to be a sequel to this joint, which I will gladly buy. Now, on a side note, how much butthurt do you think Warner Brothers has right now to make a game from their main comic book rival? For those that don't know, Warner Brothers controls the Lego rights to games, and they also own DC Comics. So imagine the slap in the face when they had to license their rival, and this game sold more than their own franchises. Lego Marvel outsold both Lego Batman games combined. Seriously, that's like someone cutting your dick off and fucking you in the ass with it. No, seriously, the Lego Marvel game outsold both Batman games combined. That is just fucking sad right there. You know, to have to license your rival, that must hurt. That must really sting when you have to do this shit. But anyway, as much as I would have liked to love to talk about the gameplay in the background, obviously I didn't talk about it too much. There really wasn't much to say other than you saw me trying to figure out puzzles like an asshole. I'll tell you right now, if a sequel to this game ever comes out, I would definitely get this motherfucker because it was worth it. The fun factor from these past 3 Marvel games were some of the best mindless fun I had on the console, and I would certainly want more of it. I know that Marvel Ultimate Alliance is never coming back, so the closest thing I have to an ensemble cast for Marvel is this game. Anyways, before I wrap up the end of this video, I do have 2 quick notes about the Goodbye PlayStation 3 series. This video was the official halfway point in the series. I know, it seems like I've been doing this shit forever. But this is the 28th game that's been completed out of a total of 55. After the remaining 2 videos this week, I have 5 more weeks to go. And by process of elimination, based on the games you've already seen posted on my channel throughout all the years I've been posting, I bet a number of you can figure out which games I still have left to go. I'm curious to see in the comments section who can guess what games or what series I still have remaining, because the final 5 weeks are all the heavy hitters left in my collection of either the best-selling games or the Game of the Year candidates up in this motherfucker. Now, as for the remaining 2 videos this week, I mentioned weeks ago during the first Final Fantasy week and Little Big Planet week that I have a couple of different weeks in which make absolute no sense at all. Tomorrow and Friday's video will be 2 games that have absolutely nothing in common with Marvel games, but I had to put them somewhere. So, this was the only week I could place those shit. And tomorrow's video alone is gonna be a serious what the fuck moment. Oh man, I can't wait to see people's reaction with that shit. But anyways, that does it for this video and for the Marvel series of games I have in my collection. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.